We'll now go to Mr. Zimmer for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to try and make my questions as brief as possible to get through as many as I can. What role did the department take during the recent floods directly? And I'm not talking about the Vancouver downtown office. I'm talking about on the water, on the ground. Quick answer, please.
Quick answer would be we were supporting the immediate actions required to protect property and people, and at the same time trying to give advice to protect fish. So we're
what does that mean?
That means we're giving permits to allow work to proceed immediately.
Okay, because we've heard from our local guides, and we've seen, just as my colleague from Chilliwack has previously mentioned, we've seen a lot of work that was done, a lot of boat fuel that was used, and we haven't heard about any compensation. Is there a plan to compensate them for their efforts? Because if you're working with them, I would assume that there would be some compensation for their assistance.
Yeah, I can't. We'd have to do a takeaway on that. I don't have any information that would suggest we've compensated any of those people that have done the work you've described.
Okay, and thanks for that. I guess I would go ahead quickly.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I would just highlight again that, we were always a supporting agency in those efforts, largely regulatory, but in some operationally on the ground where we could.
But
I
heard mention of ENGOs in passing, but I guess I'm concerned. I've seen this before. I'm very, know the anglers and the angling community in the Fraser Valley really across Canada very well. And I haven't seen the department work particularly well with anglers on the ground or on the water. What role will the department take in working with volunteers? Because we see some of the best work done by volunteers. We see salmon restoration happening, again, unpaid, yet we've heard record amounts of money getting dumped into the DFO. And with little showing up on the water to help the efforts of the volunteers. I guess, we see that there's a lot of cleanup to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, as you've mentioned. What role will the department take working with volunteers to restore the stocks impacted by the floods?
So I can just I'll just quickly highlight, I guess, under the Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative, we are putting an entire pillar and focus around better integration and collaboration. I've met already with the Lower Fraser Collaborative Table, which is a process that involves both anglers, commercial fishers, and Indigenous representatives in talking to them not only about fishing impacts, but as you say, their interest in really being part of the solution and leading in a lot of the solution around fish habitat restoration work.
I appreciate that, and I just have to go quickly. What I've heard from some of those conversations, it seems like there's a meeting and it's a box to be checked, but there's very little listening being done by the department. But I have one last question, I guess, and comment. We've, my colleague from Chilliwack as well has really signaled that a mark selective fishery is very important. The BC provincial government has said that the mark selective fishery is very important to our BC salmon stocks. It's even going to be more important as a result of what's happened and the impacts of these recent floods. What is the department doing now to actually implement a mark selective fishery?
I can quickly take that and say that one of the key areas and one of the key requirements for considering expansion or further mark selective fisheries is having the mass marking occurring and in place at our hatchery facilities. And under PSSI, we are...
Because we've heard this, we've actually seen this conversation has gone on for 20 years. And considering doesn't mean anything, frankly. I want to hear, because we actually heard that somebody was supposed to be appointed as a director to oversee the process of establishing the fishery, and you're saying it's just kind of a thought. What is substantively being done to implement a mark selective fishery in BC?
We are in the process of increasing our capacity to do mass marking. That is a key fundamental piece, which means where we mark the fish so that they could be fished in a mark selective fishery. That's a key initial first step. It will allow for where we can do it without impacting wild stocks, consider mark selective fisheries. But it also has a broader benefits in terms of our
Timeline
stock
of when
assessment and
when that
science
actually is
information.
going to start? Do you have a timeline?
We are looking to expand our mark selective fishing, mark selective capacity going forward this coming year. But there is a number of ongoing conversations required with industry around where we can move forward on those mark selective fisheries proposals in a precautionary way. So that work will have to
certainly
happen in
Washington
parallel.
State, it's been done
Thank you,
successfully
thank
for
you,
many
Mr.
years.
Zimmer.
And
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Zimmer.